It's an expensive show, I know that. But like, Jeff, I see him around at game developer events and he's always been very proactive and interested in games. He's actually asked me for years like, "Hey man, when's your next game coming out?" And I'm always like, It's not ready yet. It's not ready yet."
I heard you say there's like 500 hours of content for a normal person.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you ever worry that will turn people off? Or
Well, we
you,
have to design for that for sure. It's not just size, but it's also like sophistication. There's a level of sophistication going on here that most puzzle games don't have. Here's the problem.
yeah, go on.
I put this to you.
Yeah.
Suppose somebody really puts in the extra effort and does literally every puzzle in the game.
What should you reward them?
Shouldn't they get something for that?
In the game, as
Right?
you said, don't you think?
Well, yeah, okay, yes. I think one of the biggest reasons VR hasn't really taken off is the game designers have not done a good job.
There's been a lot of news the last few days about Larian and Gen AI.
Okay,
No, I'm loading you up here.
yeah.
What, what's your opinion on all that?
Well,
Anyway,
here's what I'm going to say.
ladies and gentlemen, special guest on the show this evening, Jonathan. What a pleasure, man. Thanks for taking some time today, man.
Thank you for having me on.
How are you feeling now that you've launched your game? The title's out there.
Well, I'm feeling good because, well, we've announced the game, so to be clear, right? We haven't
Hmm.
launched it in the sense of like it is not yet available for people. So
No.
that time is not until next year. But getting ready to just publicly announce the game and talk to people about it and all that it's like a whole process. And I've been doing that for the past couple weeks. It's gone well, but it is a lot of work. And so actually this week, it's a little chill. Just I'm back to sort of regular working on the game, which, there's always a lot to do. So it's not like I'm like, oh, it's so
Yeah.
slow or anything, but it's just not quite this like trying to put together a trailer is a very complicated process.
Who did the
No
trailer?
matter what.
Did you? I guess you had a big hand in it, obviously.
We, we worked with a couple of companies to try to do, because again, we're working with a publisher for the first time. We have some marketing budget to do a bigger, flashier trailer. And so there's a number of like studios that uh, do this, right, as their
Mm.
whole business. And we worked with a couple, and I don't know, I didn't love that process. Part of it was that it was very rushed. So we had about 2 months notice before we were going into the Game Awards that we were going to be in there. And so then we have to figure out what is the trailer even going to be and what are we going to try to do? And let's start working with one of these companies and let's see if they have an idea for a trailer that's better than us. And that takes some weeks. And oh, they don't. Well, let's sort of go ahead with ours. Oh, that's not working with this partner. Let's try someone else. So there was a lot of this kind of thing, and it's a hassle. But
Bit of a shit show.
I wouldn't go that far. But it's not the kind of process that I love to do. Like anytime you're working with an external party that has its own organizational structure and momentum to how fast things happen and all that. There's always this thing where small decisions take an entire day or whatever. When you don't have that many days till the event, that can be difficult. But I think we came out with something that uh, is good in the end, I think. I could imagine having done more, but given the constraints, like we have 90 seconds. It's for a general audience, so like, well, okay. So this award show was 4 hours long. As far as I recall, we were literally the only puzzle game in the entire show, right? Like 90 seconds out of four
Pretty
hours,
much, yeah. Which is a good
which
thing,
is
right?
it's good if people are like, oh, puzzle game, and also, if um just to seem different from what's around you in the show, right? On the other
Mm.
hand, uh there could sort of be this thing where like, oh, I'm here to see a awesome God of War game or something. What is this crap, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you get the plus and the minus of that, I think. But so it was like, how do we like we didn't just want to do like a teaser that doesn't tell you anything about it. It's a really complicated game, and us
Mm,
being a smaller team, I wanted to explain like the basics of the game because I wanted to answer the question that someone would implicitly have. Why do I care about this as opposed to like a thousand other puzzle games that I could play, right? And so I you could think of a few different routes to try to answer that question, but I was doing it sort of just by like, look, it's this game with this really complicated structure and it's got all these things going on and all that. And then cramming all that into 90 seconds is pretty challenging, you know?
I can
But
imagine.
yeah, we had before working with these external agencies as well, and also while working with them, we'd been sort of just doing our own in-house rough draft of a trailer that we weren't taking that serious. Like it wasn't like well
Yeah.
edited or anything, but just like let's put the ideas in sequence and see how they work and try messing them around and that helped a lot, I'll
I love
say.
the shot where it comes out of the overworld and you see everything. I mean,
Yeah.
that kind of gave me just chills.
Yeah. Well, so that's another one of the challenges is like, okay, we don't have the time or the money to do what a lot of these trailers do, which is like let's hire an animation house to do like a 2 minute long 3D
Yeah.
movie or something, right? And so those feel very glitzy, but on the downside, gamers often complain like, I want to see the game. I don't want to see like a cutscene or whatever, right? I don't know if they had that. I'm not saying they had that complaint about this year. I've been too busy to pay attention, but like, just that, like going back to E3 in the old days and stuff, that is the complaint that people would often have is like, how do I know if the game's any good, right? If I'm just watching animations. But that wasn't an option for us. And so it was like, okay, how do we, mostly from gameplay footage and then a little bit of like, graphics overlay and stuff, how do we do compelling things? Like what can we show to people that's interesting? And that's a good so regardless or independent of making a trailer, right? The thing that's good about this time of development is it's when you start doing that. You know, uh, you start thinking about how exactly does this look when somebody else who doesn't know this game looks at the screen? What are they seeing? What's going into their brain? And as a designer, you do that actually all through development because that's how you know what decisions to make when you're making the game. But it's a different level of seriousness and it's a different level of detail when you get to this point where you're like, okay,
Mm.
this is going to a trailer and a big show. And then going forward from here, we're going to be talking more publicly about the game. There's going to be all these times when we'll have it, probably I don't know what the schedule is going to be yet, but typically at a conference or a trade show, you might have a game there, or you might do, a press event where the press comes in and plays it, and
Hmm.
it just gets a lot more serious at that point in terms of like, okay, how good of a job are we doing on this thing that's exactly on the screen right now? So yeah, for the overworld thing, we decided in this rough draft that we did that we wanted to do an overworld shot, and that's actually very challenging for multiple reasons.
Mm.
Um, One reason is because the overworld's a very complicated part of the game, and the graphics were not done. Um,
It was patched
so,
up, was it? A little bit.
well, two things. One is we prioritize that over the
Mm.
weeks before the trailer was shot is like let's have some portions of the art team's effort go primarily into the overworld, which is fine because we also it's not like that works just for the trailer. We also need
No,
that
of
to finish
course.
the game, right? It's
Yeah.
just what order do you do things in?
Hmm.
Um, we didn't get all of it. Uh, Now in the trailer, we did want to show like overworld with like some fog of war and stuff and get that concept, but it just so happens that the fog is over the areas that don't have art yet. Um, you know,
I didn't even
uh,
notice. I'm going to look back now.
you would probably have to look pretty hard to notice,
Yeah.
but so that's one of the things. And the other thing is it's kind of a technical flourish the way we do that map because it literally, there's a very big overworld. And when you go into the map mode in the game, it just pulls the camera straight up into the sky and like zooms in on the thing. So you're looking at the actual world from a bird's eye view, and it's like seamless, just like in the trailer, it's just seamless and all that. And that's a little bit of like a technical show off because most games couldn't really do that. right?
That's what I'm saying.
Because
Yeah.
when you try to show that many, like the walking around in the game from screen to screen is like one little screen of stuff, and that overworld is 120 something. I think it's 19 by 11 screens or something like that. Wait, no, that's wrong. So sorry, 19 is the number of squares horizontally on a screen. That's why the numbers weren't making sense to me. I was like, what? But it's some whatever the dimensions are of the number of screens on the overworld, it comes out to like somewhere between 110, 120, something like that. But uh, that's a lot of stuff. And so we're still in development. This trailer's coming up. We want to shoot the trailer. We're frantically adding art to the overworld, which is by far the biggest, most complicated level in the game, right? A lot of the levels are just essentially smaller spaces. So we kind of don't know how the engine's going to hold up as we're massively adding all this art with very little time remaining to do the trailer. So that's a fun time. But it worked. I mean, we had prioritized this correctly. Like, look, just a couple months ago, we were very clear about this situation. Overworld's the most complicated level in the game. It's going to have the most stuff on it graphically. Our engine and gameplay code needs to be built to handle that. And as long as it can handle that, most of the rest of the levels are kind of easy, actually, because they have way less stuff. And that's a good way, you might get lulled into designing things the other way around, like, well, we should design for our typical case, right? But if you do that, then when you come along and try to do a big thing, even if it's rare in the game, like you want that experience to be good, especially if it's like the main hub that you keep going back to. And so maybe this is a little too rambly. I don't know if people understand what I'm saying, but like
No, no, of course.
um, you know, you like having high standards for that kind of a thing is part of how you like who is a good game developer and who is not is to some extent a self-selected criterion. It's like what decision, of course, everybody's free to have their own opinion about who you think is a good developer, but a lot of the time it's like, did they do a good job on this thing or not, right? And you know, a lot of that, I mean, some of that is just do you know enough about game development to achieve the thing? But a lot of the time it's just choosing to do a good job on the thing or not. And like sometimes it sounds stupid, but a lot of the time, especially when modern games are so complicated, developers just sort of don't ever consciously choose to preemptively do a good job on a particular thing. And then they get to it and it's harder than they thought about, and it's a little too late to change the way you're doing everything. And so that thing isn't that good. Like that's a story of a lot of game development, you
Do you
know?
mean cutting corners where you shouldn't be?
Well, it's like, let's say you've got some fixed schedule by which the game has to be out, which for the majority of development, we didn't have that, although we just said the game's coming out in 2026. So now we at least have a vague schedule, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you've got some schedule, you've got some plan by which you're going to get all the work done, all the programming, all the art, all these
Hmm.
things. You've got those laid out on a calendar of some kind, right? And something happens, you get to some point, and it's like, oh, this one area of the game, let's pick an example that doesn't apply to this game, but like
Mm.
let's say you're doing a platformer like a Conker's Bad Fur Day, I don't know, whatever, one of those.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you've got different worlds. You've got the fire world and the ice world, or the let's say fire world, earth world, and crystal world, and then a few other worlds, right?
Mm.
And you just didn't think about it that much. And you go doing the worlds and you do fire world and you do earth world, whatever. And then you go to crystal world and you're like, oh man, the rendering engine is really slow now because we didn't think about the fact that the rendering effects that we use to make things look like crystal, like translucency with diffraction and all that, are actually pretty expensive. And we never made a scene beforehand to test how that would look. And like now, the frame rate is really slow in Crystal World, and we don't have that much time to figure this out because we've got this schedule that we've got to hit, right? So when that happens, like, do you delay the game? Do you cut Crystal World completely? Do you keep Crystal World, but you make your crystal effect kind of suck so it doesn't look that good,
Yeah.
right? What do you do? And And that's a very typical thing that happens in game development. And so one of the best things you can do is to try to get out ahead of that by proactively figuring out what is your biggest problem going to be. And, technically or whatever, or design wise or whatever it happens to be. And you just try to confront that problem early so you don't end up in that situation. And so for us, that was this. And so it turned out, that the frame rate was good enough. We have plenty of time left to optimize the engine still, but in this time frame of trying to hit the trailer,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
the trailer is being live captured by the trailer editing people, and they want to capture it at 4K 60 FPS, right? And if the game can't run at 4K 60 FPS, we're not going to get a smooth capture. They could probably do some stuff to try to tweak it, but then it wouldn't be in sync with the sound and like all that, right?
Mm.
So so would the overworld run at 4K 60 FPS? And it did. On a fast machine, it did, right? And then we have a little more
Yeah.
time to like, go through and optimize some other stuff to get it, on lower end machines to run fast.
Um, so it was a 90-second slot.
Yeah.
Is it true that it's a million for 30 for 3 minutes, 500K for 90, or you can't say?
So um I don't know. And there's various reasons why. There's more than one reason why I don't know.
Okay.
Um it's an expensive show, I know that.
Yep.
But I can't really go into details of how we're in the show and why and all that.
Okay.
So yeah, but it is. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like in the old days, I mentioned E3 earlier. That used to be one of the events around the world where games would premiere, right? And companies would spend all this money on that, right? And like the console holders would have these big shows and stuff. And since then, E3 died out and it sort of became, Nintendo has their online show and Sony has their online show, but for like third party, if you're like Electronic Arts or something,
Yeah.
aside from being in one of those shows,
This
there
is it.
wasn't for a little bit a thing to
Mm.
announce your big game. And then the Game Awards, I mean, the Game Awards has been around for a while, right? But it's just been slowly growing and growing, and now it's one of these things. And I think, Jeff does multiple shows a year, and they're all this big announcement venue now, right? Because
Yeah.
uh, that vacuum existed, and he just stepped into it. I think he's good. He's done a good job stepping into it, right? I think I'm not saying he only stepped
Yeah.
into it
Yeah.
or anything, but like players want to know. So part of enjoying video games is having that moment where you get surprised by something that's announced that you didn't expect, or getting more information about some game that you're already were looking forward to and all that. And like not having a consistent thing for that is a little bit of a bummer. So that part of Game Awards, I think, has been really nice.
Your publisher handle most of it and that kind of stuff and talk to Jeff and his team, or do you get a hand in that at all? Or you can't say that either.
So Jeff, I actually uh talk to him personally most of the time,
Okay.
just because there wasn't that much coordination needed. It
No,
was
no.
like we talked a little bit in advance about what it would be like, but then it was like, give us a trailer by a certain time. But like, Jeff, I see him around at game developer events, and he's always been very proactive and interested in games. He's actually asked me for years, like, hey man, when's your next game coming out? And I'm always like, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. But as you can see, finally, we're getting close to ready.
Does it get easier to say that it's not ready yet as the years go on, or does it get harder?
In the beginning, it's easy because you're not that far in development
Mm,
and you're maybe not expecting it to be a 10-year long mega project yet.
yeah.
And then sometime around the middle, when it's like, oh God, this has turned like we're 4 or 5 years in and it's half done. What?
Yeah.
Um, then it starts getting really hard, honestly. Like there's a
Yeah.
period this is the longest development, but I've done a number of long developments now. And there's always some point where you're pretty far in that you've been doing this for a really long time, but you're also far enough from being done that you can't really see the route to being done. It's like when you
Really?
travel through the desert and you're in the middle of the desert and everywhere you look there's like desert all around and you're just like, look, if we keep going this way, probably we'll get out of the desert and
But
back to
is that the
civilization.
perfectionist coming out?
No, I mean it's
No?
really so with a game like this, I don't know. I mean, if I had so there was a moment, we started this game in 2016. Around 2020, 2021, of course, there was all this COVID lockdown stuff that the world decided to do. And that was a sort of a big distraction because you're
Of
just
course.
thinking about how do we adapt to this and all that. Everybody's remote now and working from home and whatever. But then sometime during the middle of that or toward the end of that, I was like, yeah, we've been working on this game for like 4.5, 5 years, and we're not even close to done. I don't even know how close we are to done. That's rough. Um, but from there you have a bunch of choices. It's like, do we drastically cut down the game and ship it in a certain amount of time? I think that's what a lot of people would do.
Definitely didn't do that with a
We didn't do
thousand plus
that.
puzzles.
In part, yeah, I think a lot of games that do that end up a little disappointing, right? And
Mm.
you even talk to people like, oh, we had to scope the game, and they're always a little disappointed in what they shipped. And so I was just like, look, we're just going to keep going, and we're going to do this game, and we're going to see how it goes. And it's a really good game, but man, it took a long
Can
time.
I? Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's going to be worth it. I'm sure of it. The funding aspect. Did you have a publisher this whole time,
No,
or how did that
so
work?
it was mostly self-funded.
Okay.
But so because we have two previous successful games and like
Yeah,
that
of
just
course.
brought in a certain amount of money. But regardless of that, I mean, running a studio is really expensive, man. Like even if
Oh
it's not
man,
that many people.
salaries every year they just stack up.
Dude, I don't even know. Like I look at these big game companies, they must be so incredibly expensive, right?
Oh,
But for us, yeah, I mean, there came a point where it's like, well, we spent pretty much all the money and we still have some income, right, from the games. But if I look at the amount, like the team size that that income would support and the amount of work that we want to do for launch, it's more than that, right? And so we signed with our publisher, Arc Games, to get some completion funding, was one element of it, just to fund us for like this last year, year and a half.
when was this?
And
Was
then
this 23?
when we signed
Yeah.
with them, or I mean, it's really kind of recent.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We've been talking to them since last year,
Hmm.
but we actually only formally commenced our deal with them this summer-ish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's recent. So all the rest of development was just on our own. But so in addition to completion funding, I think it's just really helpful to have someone who is professionally helping to market and publicize the game because the modern internet is just it's really noisy and it's from the developer side, you need to figure out how to reach the people who would like your thing if they knew about it, but they don't know about it, right? And you know, that's actually doing those people, if they legitimately would like your game, you're doing them a little favor, right? By showing them something that they would like to play. So it's not like, I don't know, among indie developers, marketing has kind of a bad name in part because we've all seen a lot of bad marketing. We've all seen a lot of like cynical marketing or whatever, how do you do fellow kids kind of marketing. Um, but
Yeah.
but there is an honest version of it that's just like, look, here's what we've got. Here's why it's different from other things and why you might be interested in it. And then you just try to reach the people who are interested in that. And that's just been getting harder and harder to do as the internet becomes more noisy. And I knew so then, we could in-house like hire a marketing company and hire a PR firm and do that. And it's just though us being a small developer, I would have to oversee that. And I'm just not gonna because we're gonna have so many problems. Like if it comes down to I'm spending my time and
Uh,
energy making sure the game is good in like whatever, however amount of time we have left
yeah.
versus I'm going to be running marketing. I'm just not going to do that much running marketing. I'm going to be focused on the game. And so having people who are doing that, I think is very helpful. And then also, there's a lot of there's a lot of things that come with that. So not only would I not spend the equivalent amount of time and energy, I don't necessarily have the connections to different countries that they have and experience in these different countries and all that. So now that said, so there is this whole thing. I mean, I talked to quite a few publishers when we were looking at this, and one of the reasons you always would sign with a publisher is, oh, we're going to do marketing, and some of the publishers don't really do that much marketing that you wouldn't have done yourself, right? And so this is always the choice is like try to make sure they're really going to do a good job. And as a developer, that's part of what you're doing is when you talk to the publisher, you just see how they react to questions that you have or see the way they talk about your game or previous games that they've published or whatever, and just is this the right person to work with, right?
Do you ever worry about? I heard you say there's like 500 hours of content for a normal person. Do you ever worry
Approximately. Yeah, that's
that will
that's an
turn
estimate.
some? Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
you ever worry that will turn people off?
Well,
Or
we
you?
have to design for that for sure, right?
Yeah,
So for people who really want to play this kind of game, like really want to play it, that's great because it's not just size, but it's also like sophistication. There's a level of sophistication going on here that most puzzle games don't have. And it's because it's this big, intricate, interwoven thing, that's why there's so much scale, right?
yeah.
But not everybody wants to sign up to be like a grunt in the puzzle game playing army for, months or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
So for those people, we do have a multiple ending structure to the game where uh you know there's a there's three endings, we'll say, and it's not like bad ending, good ending. I don't like that because I think if you get to the end of a game, you deserve something for that.
yeah.
You deserve not to be like criticized. Uh, so they're all good endings and they're all meant to be satisfying, but they just give you different amounts of view into the world of the game and what's going on. You get more and more thorough view as you go toward the final endings, right?
So
So,
the first inning's a bit
um,
more achievable for the normal player, would you say? Or
yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, it is still hard a little bit because part of it feeling satisfying is not just the fiction of the ending, it's just like how did you get there, right? Like if you start a game and you walk down a hallway and you could have done stuff in the rooms but you didn't, and then at the end of the hallway is the end game and you're like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
won. Then it just let you in, right? And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not satisfying. And so the balance that we're trying to strike, I mean, there's a lot of design things we're still doing until release, but one of them is how what do we require you to do that's enough that feels like you legitimately got to the ending, right?
Mm.
While not requiring you to play, an incredibly, incredibly large game.
It's such a
And we
tough
have some
balance,
secrets
man.
to that.
Yeah,
There's some secret techniques that help with this that I'm not going to spoil.
yeah,
Uh,
of course.
they're for people to discover, but let's just say we do leverage some design techniques to help that happen.
And so, is this game not achievable without the engine that you've created?
It's not clear. I would say probably some of the stuff that we do wouldn't work very well on other engines because we do some very like that overworld thing I was talking about. We do some very specific things to achieve that effect. And there are things that you might not do in another engine, or I don't know. Or would be hard. There are things that would be hard to do like from what's called user level, which is like I'm not editing the source code of the engine, which almost nobody does, right? But you have ways to plug in your own code, and you typically wouldn't be able to do that. That is a relatively small part of the game. Um, we just wouldn't have that or something.
Yep.
Um, there's definitely a lot of like atmospheric and volumetric effects that we're making heavy use of that, we coded up specifically to be what we want. And if you were just using some pre-baked version of it that some engine provided you, it might be slower to get the same kind of effect, or it might not look as good in the levels that you're doing and all that um, because what you're doing is just tailored to your exact situation, right?
Yep.
And then, but I think as time goes on, so people would ask me the same question in the witness time frame, and it was like, well, when we started the game, we're doing all this pre-computed illumination that the engines couldn't do in a generalized way, and now they do. Like the feature set of Unity and Unreal is getting bigger over time, and so the answer to this question of why build your own engine tends to be more about performance of the engine and usability how fast does it start up for players, right? When they play the game. But also, I have a whole big uh, I have a whole big agenda. So part of the reason we made an engine for this game is
Yeah.
because I made a new programming language to
Jive.
replace, yeah, and that's to replace C++, which is one of the industry standard programming languages that people use. And I had used it for many, many years, and I just got so sick of it. Um, and so I wanted to make something better that would help both with games and general software. And then making an engine and then a game in that engine is a way of proving that this language is good enough to ship commercial games, right? Like if we can ship a good game in this language, then obviously it's at least as good probably as C++ was because we made a good thing with it.
Yeah, of
And
course.
and then maybe it's better, right? So so that was really the plan this time. I think as time goes on, you can get by a little bit more in these other engines. I think a lot of people do. Like people make games without any programmers at all sometimes, right? Because they could run Unreal and like play around with blueprints and hook some stuff up and it kind of does the right thing. Or maybe now it's going to be,
Does th-
Claude code generated my code or something.
can I interject? Does that feel like
Yeah.
cheating to you?
No, no, no. I think
No?
that's all fine. Yeah.
That's all fine? Yeah.
Progress is all about making it easier to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm always in favor of that. But there are trade-offs, right? And the trade-offs are something like, I mean, let's talk about a tool like a knife, right? If you
Mm.
think about knives, there's actually really a whole lot of different sizes and shapes of knife for different purposes, right? There's butter knives that are not sharp so that your kid doesn't stab himself in the eye, right? There's various knives for food and stuff. And then there's a scalpel for operating on someone, which is technically a knife, right? There's all sorts of other ones you could think about. And so like relatively small changes in the form of a tool actually matter a lot. And that's
Mm.
clear in the physical world. In the software world, we for some reason don't think about it that way, but I think it's also true. And so when you are in control, at least, so ignoring for a second the question about whether you're using an engine or building your own, whether you have the source code and the capability to modify that engine or not, kind of matters because if you can modify it, you can like change the shape of the tool to be the precision that you need, right? And then what I've always said is the stuff that we do in our games, like the designs, are subtle enough that you need a certain amount of precision to make them work. Like if you just kind of like do a clumsy version of trying to use a pre-made engine and like while the animations don't quite play in the way that we wanted, but they sort of work and the shaders don't quite look like we wanted, but they sort of work. And you stack up all these sort of works. At some point, there's not enough precision and the play experience is a little bit confused and people aren't in the right state to see the cool subtle thing, right?
Mm.
That said, so like I said, you can potentially have that same precision if you're like get a source license to Unity or Unreal and then edit it that way. But that's also really hard because those engines are a large amount of code because they're made to be general for all their customers and do all the things all their customers want. And so trying to modify those engines is actually a lot harder than trying to modify an engine that you made yourself because the one you made yourself is just a lot simpler. Conversely, like with this engine that we built for this game, we're not about to like go try to compete with Unity or Unreal and steal their customers because it's like not the same kind of engine. It's
No.
it's a lot more like streamlined and specific, right? And so these are just the trade-offs that exist in these space. Am I saying that most game developers should make their own engine? Probably not. I like doing it. I think we won't have to make a new engine for a while. I think this one will last us for the foreseeable future, so that's great. It means we can get more stuff done faster now without rebuilding. Because for the Witness, so Braid was its own engine in as much as you could call it that, but it was a little simpler because it's a 2D game. The Witness was its own engine. that kind of descended from the Braid engine, but a lot of work went into it. And then this is its own engine that descended from the Witness engine, but including putting it in a whole different
So
programming
they're all
language.
siblings in a way, would you
In
say?
a
Or
way,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And the Witness was such a great game. I got the platinum Feb 2016, I reckon. All the
Yeah.
trophies, achievements. I know you hate achievements. I've heard you say,
Well,
well,
I don't know. So what I would say is there's two things about them.
yeah.
Um, Sometimes they're very generic. Like in the old days, you needed to have a certain number of achievements and it would force your game into this structure and then games would give out, I mean, a lot of games still do give out really stupid achievements for like, hey, you swung your weapon for the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
Congratulations. And I think all that stuff is dumb. And then I don't, just as an author of games, I don't like being forced to do achievements as like part of a platform requirement, right? Now that's going away, right? Some platforms now have completely dropped them and all that.
Oh, really?
I think
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with having achievements if you want them as a developer, right? Then it's a cool thing that you could do, or it's a well, let's talk about some of the pluses of achievements, right? Other players could like, in general, these systems have a way for you to look at somebody's page and see what achievements they have. And that can just give you a little bit of community you wouldn't have otherwise. Like, oh, my friend Bob is at this point of the game or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's cool. Um, I do think that some of the reasons achievements happen are a little bit too cynical. Like, oh, we're trying to reward players for making progress in the game. And I just feel like the game should reward you for making progress in the
Yeah, I
game. Like
agree.
why
I
why do you
agree.
want these things outside? So there are good ways to use them and bad ways to use them and all that.
Can you promise me something about syncing? Don't make me do every single puzzle
No,
for
we
the
don't. We
platinum.
don't.
For the platinum, please.
Well, okay. Well, so that's
You can't promise
we
that, can you?
well, we just haven't decided whether the
Yeah,
criteria for that kind of thing yet.
I know.
Here's the problem.
Yeah, go
Here's
on.
here I put this to you.
Yep.
Suppose somebody really puts in the extra effort and does literally every puzzle in the game.
What should you reward them?
Shouldn't they get something for that?
In the game, as
Right?
you said, don't you think?
Well, yeah, okay, yes.
The
But
cutscene,
like
maybe
if
some
there are
skins or something. I don't know.
achievements,
Yeah.
if there are achievements, shouldn't they get something? And so,
Yeah.
you know, we're still thinking about that. To get to the endings and all that, and in fact, through the general course of the game, a significant fraction of the puzzles are optional. Um, and the game is very nonlinear. So if you get stuck one way, you can go another way and do other things. And it's like, it's how, it's how we make it a good, or let's say the puzzles are real puzzles as opposed to fake. Like a fake puzzle is like, oh, we're pretending this is hard to figure out, but it's not really. Or if you played one of those games where like your character walks into a room and there's a puzzle there and you start looking at it and 12 seconds later the character says, maybe I should go look in
God of
that
War,
box on the
Ragnarok.
shelf. Or yeah,
that's
whatever.
that's God of
Many
War.
games have done this, right? And
Yeah.
that's also a fake puzzle because like
Yeah.
it'll just tell you everything to do. So we don't
Yeah.
do that. Um,
By the
and
way,
there
God
are,
of War is a great
design
game. But yeah.
techniques. Yeah, I actually didn't play that one because I've been too busy working, but there are design techniques of how do you prevent, how do you have legitimate puzzles, which you actually have to think about and engage with to solve, while also not having these game design problems. So like in the old days of completely linear puzzle games, um, which it's funny, so like Myst, which is one of the canonical puzzle games, is very nonlinear, right? You go to these different areas and whatever, but then a lot of the Myst clones that came after like are very linear. And in fact, a lot of the like point and click 2D games before that are mostly linear and stuff. And the problem when things are linear, like say they're very story driven and there's puzzles and you get
Yeah.
stuck on a puzzle, it's like, okay, well, I don't get to play the game anymore because everything else that I would play is like after that and I'm stuck on it. Nowadays, you would just go on like the internet and like search for the solution to
Yeah.
the puzzle, but
Yeah.
that also wrecks the play experience a little. Like you shouldn't need to go on the internet and get answers for a game that you paid for, right? That doesn't sound good. So nonlinearity and a decent helping of optional puzzles is how we approach that.
Oh man, I can't wait to play it. So you sure it's coming 26?
I mean, is anybody 100% sure of anything? Um,
Yeah.
we're pretty
What's
sure.
80% sure? 90% sure?
Yeah, I don't, some number like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
okay, here's the thing. We have a
Yeah.
lot to do to get the game done next year.
Yeah.
I don't want to release a bad game. I don't want to like
Not
if
yeah.
it's like December 31st, 2026 and there's still some very deep problems in the game that would upset players,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to ship it to them, right? I'll wait a little bit longer because we want to make a good game.
Hmm.
Um, you know, players who have appreciated our previous games want there's a certain kind of quality that they want, right? And we will give that. Uh, but I don't anticipate needing to delay like that. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll see. We'll see. We will provide more updates in the coming months as
Am I
to
am I right to say there's some spiritual elements coming through in that trailer?
yeah, probably. It depends on what you mean exactly, because I think there's a few different things. So what did you see that gives you that
I don't know.
feeling?
I just feel like it might be your exploration of things. If I don't want to try and spoil things, but that's the
No,
vibe I was
I
getting.
will I will do what I could. I'll say what I can about this without
Yeah,
spoiling things about the
that's
game.
yeah,
So one of okay, there's a game with a really complicated story, like fictional structure, because there's a bunch of stories happening at the same time. You go to all these worlds, you like visit all these worlds. Each world has its own story and characters, right? So there's four of those. Um, the character that you play at the start of the game has her own world and story that she comes from. And then, she ends up in this like facility for colliding worlds together, not literally smashing planets together or something, but like
yeah.
instantiating these parts of realities and then mixing them. And what is all that? And that's the last part of the trailer is sort of this guy asking the questions. So the guy asking those questions in the trailer is uh has come to this place before you in the game, and he's left some audio logs as he's initially explored. And then maybe there's some surprises later about where he ended up and what happened to him, right? But
Okay.
one of the central mysteries of the game, at least for the first, let's say, two-thirds of it, is like, why is all this here? Who did this and why? And so then, as someone making the fiction for a game like this, um, well, I'll try to avoid generalizations and just say when I do something like that, I want to at least try to make it meaningful and not be just entertainment fiction. I think stories for games that are mainly entertainment are fine. That's most stories. I think they can get dreadful sometimes when they, you know, try to be serious or provide a teaching moment or whatever, and you're like, what is this game trying to say to me? So we're also not doing that. We're not patronizing, we're not condescending, but the background story of why all this stuff is there and what's going on is connected for sure to spiritual ideas of how do we understand the real world that we live in, right? How do we think about it? Why is the universe the way that it is? Why does it have the properties that it has? And can we use simulations or games or little reality instantiations to help us understand our world better and to help us know what to do? How should you behave? What what is appropriate? And so, the story is still evolving because it's the easiest thing to keep working on as you get closer to release. Like graphics get locked down and gameplay gets locked down, but
Yeah.
you can change the story pretty late. And so There's a lot to be done on it yet, but that's the general direction of the story. It's about caring deeply about why is reality reality, and
Seems like a lot to tackle, man, but you're up for the task, clearly.
I mean, it's just why I do video games to make these kind of things. So, I mean, again, this won't be too much of a surprise. So both The Witness and Braid were kind of in different flavors of that direction, and this is yet again another different flavor of that kind of thing.
You
The
wouldn't say you're
difference this
leaning
time,
more in this time versus those two?
yeah, I mean, what I would say is this game has much more explicit story than either of
Mm.
those games, and much more of what you would recognize as like a classically told story where
Oh,
characters are
okay.
having dialogues and
Yep.
all this sort of thing, right?
There's been a lot of news the last few days about Larian and Gen AI. Um,
Okay.
no, I'm loading you up here.
Yeah.
What what's your opinion on all that?
Well,
Anyway,
here's what I'm going to say. Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to make an analogy to earlier generations of tools, right?
yeah,
Okay. In the really old days, game developers, like if they were going to make a texture map for a 3D game, which is like just the way the color varies across the surface of, an
yeah, yeah,
object,
yeah, yeah.
they would draw every pixel by hand, right? And that was the art. And this was before games had dynamic lighting or anything. Then a couple years later, we start having dynamic lighting as standard in games. And then the artists have to do something different. They're no longer drawing exactly what you see on the screen. They have to draw this thing that gets the color changed as it gets lit. And there was a controversy then. It's like, no, I don't want to give up that specificity. Like my art is painting the exact pixels that show up on the screen. But if you do that, you can't have a game that has certain properties like just dynamic lights, or like I walk into a room and it's darker or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so later on, the volume of things that people make in games became very large, and they started using all these procedural texture generation tools. Um, if they're a good and so I'm trying to remember the name. God, there's one of these that developers use all the time, and I'm just blanking on the name, but uh, you could. It's because I've had like 4 or 5 meetings plus podcasts today. It's we're
It's all
getting
right.
tired.
It's all
But
right.
you know, so there's these tools where you just say, "Oh, I want generate a bunch of scratches that I can layer on metal or whatever," and it'll go right. These are
Yeah.
pre-AI tools, right? They started really 15 or 20 years ago. Um, but they help a lot. And so bad developers will just literally use the texture that it gives you and just put it in the game, and it doesn't look that good. But good developers use these as building blocks and then can mix them together in different ways to make the surface that they want, and they can do it a lot faster. And it's just a lot, in most cases, it's just a much more expedient tool than drawing every pixel by hand in Photoshop, right? Or whatever. And so AI now you can see as a new version of that, right? So a bad developer is just going to say to AI, give me the bitmap of what this character looks like, and they'll just put that in the game, and it's not going to look that good. But I think when developers have skill, what they're going to do is they're going to have tools that use AI to generate these building blocks, and then the artists on the team will manipulate the building blocks um, in an artful way if they're skillful and get something. So we don't have any such tools in-house here. We still use all the classical stuff, but I think there's a lot of AI investment happening from these bigger teams. I always think that these trends take longer to materialize anyway. Like the good version of AI in game development workflow is probably at least 3 years to 5 years away, right? But I think teams are experimenting early on with that.
You think it's an ethical issue as well, like with the art side of it?
It's quite possible.
Yeah.
What I will say is I will leave that to artists to discuss, right? So I'm sure people have heard this, but to recap, the potential ethical issue is these AI companies are making all this money selling these products and stuff, and the products can generate images, for example, like if you just go to ChatGPT and say,
Yeah.
give me an image. The reason it can do that is because it trained on all these images that are out in the world.
Mhm.
most of which were drawn by artists who were not compensated for that work, right? And so how do you solve that? Do we just not have AI? I don't know. I don't know if that's the best answer. Do we have some structure for compensating people? Maybe. Um,
Oh, that sounds complicated too.
it's well, it is. So these things always
Yeah,
induce friction. So I was gonna,
yeah.
again, I don't want to get anyone mad at me, right?
No.
But like, let's say you want to license music from a band that you liked 20 years ago or something, right? There's a legal framework in the West for doing that.
Mhm.
And it's such a pain in the ass that in games we usually don't do it because even though maybe the music isn't as good or it's not exactly what we wanted, it doesn't, there's all these other encumbrances that come with the thing. Like you can't usually license in perpetuity. So at some point,
Got to
10
remove
years
it.
from now, maybe you have
Yeah,
to rip the music out of your game. Or maybe if
yeah,
nobody's working on the game anymore because it just is out on Steam, you might be forced to take it down and then nobody could play the game anymore, right?
yeah.
And
That's
so there's
happened.
all these, along with this legal infrastructure, which was introduced to compensate artists and protect them, there are also drawbacks that, if they are extreme enough, will lead to people not really doing those things anyway, right? I think it's hard. That said, I am not a visual artist. I work
No,
in the
either
art
am
of
I.
game design and the art of
Yeah.
programming. And so, um, and I think the issues are a little bit different for each of these subfields. Like in programming, it is also true that it's, it's trained on all this source code that was out there in the world. The difference being that source code is usually like open source, meaning it's put with the expectation that you will download it and use it however you want anyway and modify it or whatever. But also these questions of style, like code does have style, but the style is not as rich and varied as the visual style of like somebody who paints, for example. And so like if somebody copies your coding style a little bit, it's like, yeah, that's not a big deal. But, you know, if I say, give me a painting in the style of Salvador Dali, very recognizable, right? And so it's just a
Yeah.
different issue, and I'm happy to let people who are who that is their primary world work this out.
So you're
Um,
steering clear of this in your studio at the moment. Because
yeah, I mean, we started this game 10 years ago, and we built all the tools for it,
yeah,
all of
I
it,
know, I
and so
know,
this is all pre-AI, so
I know.
we don't even have to deal with any of this. Like we
I mean, for
wouldn't,
future
and
projects. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah.
yeah, so for future projects, what I would say is, so first of all, I'm an AI quality skeptic. So rewinding a little bit is all these people say stuff like, "Oh my God, programming is so good for AI," and I try to get AI to generate code. It's terrible and it doesn't really do. So so I don't quite believe it's as good as everybody else believes. And then my
Mhm.
experience, I've played around generating images, and my experience with that is, uh,
Takes
the
takes
images
hours
aren't,
to get something half
well,
decent.
it
Yeah.
takes a long time and it's a very frustrating process because like it doesn't even really understand what it's generating. So if you say like, okay, do one like that, but with this and that change,
Mm.
it'll kind of try to do that, but it's not, it doesn't really know what it's doing and it's hard to converge on something good, right? So like
Yeah.
AI image generation is super impressive if you're not, if you don't have an eye trained for quality of the output,
Yes.
and then also, if you don't care exactly what image you get back, right? Then then it seems impressive. But as soon as you like really care about the result, you find that it's actually not that usable in a lot of cases, right? And so the question is, can somebody make, let's say, again, for texture maps in video games, I'm sure many people are working on this right now, but like, is there an AI version of one of these tools that's just substantially better than the current tools in terms of enabling people to be productive at a high quality level? Because that's the thing, is like the people who use these tools are trying to make high quality games. Like people who are making low quality games will just download a free texture pack off the internet anyway, right? And nobody cares. And so, um, and that has to be more. I mean, there's uses of AI that are a little bit non-controversial at least. So like, let's say I take a classic procedural tool and it's confusing because there's so many menus. So I just have a little search where I type the function that I'm looking for in the program,
Yeah.
and it just pops up those buttons or something, right? I
Yeah.
think that's probably the easiest thing to do and doesn't step on any of these potential legal issues that you're talking about. But then, so then you go further than that and you're like, okay, it's generating layers that you're going to blend together. I mean, yeah, like what is it generating and how good is that? I would have to evaluate that. And I would also have to look at like what consensus has the world come to about what is ethical and what is not ethical. And we would just have to look at the tool and say, do we feel this tool is ethical or unethical? And that it's complicated, right? And so fortunately, none of that's happening this year for us. And so we'll
I've been
figure it out.
seeing this shit on Twitter. It's like it'll be a screenshot and it's like imagine this and it's AI morphs it into a game and they all look so terrible. Have you seen those?
Well, there's all these ones. Yeah, like I saw this one where it's
Uh,
like, oh my God, someone posts, oh my God, AI games are going to be so sick. And it's like this Call of Duty. You probably saw this exact
yeah,
video. It's like a Call of Duty
yeah,
guy running onto a train,
yeah.
and there's like, oh, nothing makes any sense. And
Yeah.
it's just a video. It's not even good as a video, first of all, because it doesn't make any sense. But whoever's posting these things doesn't
Oh.
understand that, like, as a player of a game, what does it mean to play a video game? It means you are making
Uh,
decisions from moment to moment based on what's happening and your expectation of what is going to happen. So if it's
mm,
just all this like random morphing stuff, you can't play that.
no,
Like that's not even a game at all. Forget good game,
it's
right?
just
Because you
yeah.
can't interact with it. And so but that is typical of a lot of the AI hype, right? So some people who are not really in this industry or in any industry that interfaces directly with AI, you talk to them and they've usually heard this giant hype wave about like, oh my God, all these jobs are going to go away because AI is going to replace everybody in like 6 months, right? And then you look at the people making these claims and the stuff that they're posting, and it's just like,
Yeah, yeah, I know
bro,
exactly.
what are you talking about, right? Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so then some people may have heard this too, but to reemphasize, right? So the sizes of data centers and all this that are doing all this stuff right now, it's incredibly expensive. A lot of these companies that are running the LLMs and stuff are running at a loss to try to jockey for position in this growing market, ostensibly growing market.
Mm,
It's like in the dot-com days, everybody, they would pay $1 to sign up a user to their website because they would hopefully win the war against everybody making that kind of website and then profit later, right? So,
like Netflix, kind of. Yeah.
yeah. So the question is though, so we've sort of reached the limits of scaling, which is just how big of a data center can you throw at the problem and still get better and better answers from your AI? And
Mm,
so for the past year or so, we've kind of plateaued. Like all these companies are claiming everything gets better every month, but like
I'm
you
not
don't
feeling
really
it.
see it.
Nah.
Yeah. And so a technological breakthrough is required for anything to get fundamentally better than it is now. Um, I don't know how to estimate the odds of that though. I'm not saying it will happen soon. I'm not saying it won't happen soon, but it's like it's an unknown, right? It's like we need to come up with some algorithmic changes in the way these AIs are trained so that we can up the power level of them, or they will continue to be what you see right now. And if they continue to be what you see right now, there's probably some stuff you can put on the front end about filtering the results or something, but you're not going to get dramatically better results out of them. And we just got done talking about how those results are often not very good. And so there kind of needs to be another technological breakthrough. And um, the weird thing is there's this perverse incentive because if you're one of these AI companies, you want to have that breakthrough first, right? So that you have the new thing that's better. But also there's so much money in the current stuff that like you get trapped in this thing where we're demoing things that we're able to claim are 5% better or whatever, and that's where most of our budget goes. And so I don't know how that's going to end up, as I guess what I'm saying. The future of AI kind of depends on does it get better from here sometime soon? Or is it going to be like if it's 5 more years of exactly what we have with minor improvements, then I don't even know what other technology is going to happen 5 years from now. We might have a lot more nuclear reactors in the USA and have a lot more power, and I don't even know what that means for like the shape of the society, right? We might successfully launch, well, probably not in 5 years, we would not launch fusion reactors, but you might at some point have fusion reactors that are clean and safe before you have AI that's better, right? I don't know. And so, you might actually have VR that like Neuralinks and like
Well,
does a
that's what I was
cool
going to
thing over
say.
your eye or
VR
whatever.
kind of hit a bubble, don't you think? Kind of hit a plateau and kind of faded a bit.
Yeah, that one's complicated. Um, I
I
think
think it's
a
because
lot
people
of,
are too lazy.
I don't know, like there's something really good about being physical when playing, but the problem is you still kind of get nausea from it.
Yeah.
Um, for multiple reasons. One is because just the rendering still isn't fast. And like, I think you probably need 200 or 300 FPS to
Really?
really start
Yeah.
getting in that zone. Yeah, instead of like 90.
Mm.
Um, and then another one though is when there's this bulky helmet on your head, there's just like you turn your head physically, it's going to lag, it's going to sway a little bit and all this stuff as you're moving around. And that's part of it. And then there's also, I'm not a VR expert by any means, but there's stuff about, there's all this stuff about the optics and like where your eye is focusing. Like your eye is focusing on the screen in front of you most of the time, but the perceived distance of the thing is different, and that creates some discord in the brain and
But I
whatever.
also, when I use it, I feel this is just personally, I feel like a loser and I should just be outside.
I like being able to
Uh,
put on like a Quest 3 or something like that, which is an old device at this point, but it was
yeah.
the first. Like the Quest 3 was the first device where I was like, oh, the it's off the shelf. I didn't have to buy some weird thing that nobody knows what it is. And the tracking is pretty good. It does, could
Yeah.
be a little better, but it's pretty good for a standalone device that doesn't need external because the Valve
Yeah.
one needed all this stuff around the room. Um, and it ran at 90 FPS on a lot of games. And I like moving around and doing that stuff. But I will say it is kind of big and bulky. And I think,
Mm.
Meta, they're doing these glasses that they announced and all these things. And I don't know what their VR roadmap looks like, but I think you can just expect that at least the capability for the hardware to get better will continue for a while. And that means it'll get lighter, it'll get a faster frame rate, all this stuff. And so, what does that mean? Does it break through to the mainstream at some point? I don't know. I mean,
Not at this moment, surely. Not
you
for the
would
next.
be
Yeah.
like I think for a while that was the going line in the industry was just like, oh, this next thing, it'll be the final mass market breakthrough.
Yeah.
Now I think it's like, well, it's maybe going to be kind of a long road to get there, because it's
Mm.
just the standard of what people would need in order for this to just be a thing laying around the house that you use regularly. Right now it's a thing that you use for a bit when it's new, and then I think usership of, and I'm not talking about any specific device, but I think VR is enough of a hassle that just there's some curve after people buy one, and then they just use it less.
Yeah.
Um, and like, what does it take? Does that curve come slowly up, or is VR never a thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. So we'll see. I think, it's hard to imagine if you could make glasses that are like, here's my regular glasses that I wear when I'm walking around the world. These are not electronic in any way, but if you could have something that looks exactly like this, but identifies people as you're walking down the street, like it was an 80s movie or something, um, I think a lot of people would buy that. And then if that
Yeah, yeah.
device has other capabilities, they might well use it. And so if you think far enough into the future,
Yeah.
all these things make sense. And the question is, what's the inflection point, right? Like where do things get good enough that that starts to take off? I like VR personally. I like VR games. Oh, one thing that I will say, which is maybe controversial, is
Yeah.
I think I think the hardware devices are kind of amazing at this point. Like I said, they still have a ways to go, but they're also very impressive. I think one of the biggest reasons VR hasn't really taken off is the game designers have not done a good job.
No, I
Um,
agree. No, that's not controversial. I think that's
yeah.
true.
Yeah, so there's this question of like what is good about VR. So let's go to one game that was very successful, right? Everyone who's done VR knows about Beat Saber, right? Um, very successful game. How do you play it? It's direct one-to-one mapping with the hands and the head. So you're moving around pretty naturally, right? You're swinging stuff. You're swinging lightsabers, but you're moving around pretty naturally. It doesn't require a ton of space, but you could sort of, if you have more space, you could use more space, kind of a thing. And then, but it doesn't do a lot of this weird, like there's a lot of UI paradigms, for lack of a better word, that people try to do that like don't totally work, but they'll argue that they do work. So like, I'm gonna climb up the wall using my
Oh,
hands or
yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
it like it
Yeah.
sticks and it feels and you move, what's happening, right? And there's all these things. And now again, one of the things that these systems are working on is good hand recognition, and you can expect that to get better over time and all that. But like,
Yeah.
I also question a lot of that. So I think the Apple HMD, you could probably get a controller for it, but by default, it didn't have one, right? And it was just like, we recognize your hands. And like, let's say I want to play a shooter game with just my hands. Am I going to go like blam? That doesn't feel that good, but it's also like, this is like if I'm doing this, when have I pulled the trigger? It's kind of ill-defined because I'm just moving there's no feedback, right? If you have a game controller, like here's one of my Quest 3 control. This is in the wrong hand. This has some buttons on it and it's got a trigger on it and those have haptic feedback and I it's very crisp pressing a button.
Mm,
There's a lot of good things about pressing buttons, right? That's why, I'm never quite, cars are going to these interfaces that are like touch screens without buttons a lot of the time. And it's like, no, I'd rather have the buttons, please, at least for important stuff, because
100%.
it's a very good way to control objects, right? And to pretend like you could just put stuff on a flat screen, you know, and pretend that that's better. It's really not better.
Can I sidetrack
So,
us for 1 second?
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
What are your thoughts of the PS5 haptics, where you know how it kind of got to pull it a little bit
I like that. So
like
so
that? Yeah.
back, I remember, as a developer before the console was released, um, there was a Sony event where you got to just see what the upcoming console was and how it worked, and that was the thing that impressed me the most, actually,
Mm.
because it was really legitimately new. Like we're used to like, rumble
Gimmicks.
in a
Yeah.
controller as being like this very soggy thing, and like it's actually really crisp the what you can do with the trigger. Now, some games do a better job of it, some games do a worse job of it, right? But
Mhm.
I like that, and I think I, like game controllers, if you just keep having fresh ideas, because I wouldn't have thought to do that. I don't think all day about game controllers, but I wouldn't have thought
Yeah.
to do that. And so, if you can have new ideas like that with every generation of game controller, you can imagine them being pretty cool eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot where we were.
I do too. That was a big sidetrack.
I know it's my fault.
Buy my puzzle game, please. Yeah.
Yes, last one. What do you think of
Okay.
Silk Song $20? I don't know if I've heard you talk about this. What is there an effect on it, other indie devs about that?
I'm
Like,
not sure. Here's what I think. Um, I think we're in economic times generally right now when leisure expenditures are a little harder for a lot of people than they would be, and they're judged a little bit more carefully, right? Um, and so I think Silksong being $20, I mean, obviously people would have paid more than $20 for that game. It would have been a big hit. Maybe they would have even made, I mean, there's always this trade-off for price point, right? If the price is higher, fewer people are going to buy it. But if it wasn't going to be a super mass market thing anyway, then, or if people would buy it anyway, either of those things, then it's better to, as the person charging the money, you would make more by pricing it higher, right? Whereas
mhm.
if it has the potential for tons and tons of people to buy it, maybe you price it lower. And what's the right decision for any particular game? I don't know. It's really hard. I've never known when we're about to release a game. Um, but I think your question was like, does that damage other games in some way? I don't think so. Like, are other games gonna not be able to charge like $30 because Silksong charged 20? I don't think that by itself even though it was a very big game, like huge game that tons of people bought, right? I don't think one game by itself is going to shift that equation, but I do think, we're sort of in this time where things are pretty rough for a lot of people, and it's just hard to justify buying expensive video games. I mean, video games, it's weird, right? So like we have this fast food chain called Five Guys Burgers and Fries that's notoriously expensive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
If I go there and get a burger and fries and a drink, it's 25 US dollars, right?
yeah.
Something like that. Um, so like an $80 video game that everyone rightly maybe perceives as too expensive. I'm not criticizing that, but that's, these bigger publishers were trying to push for 80, or there were some people saying, "Oh, this next episode in this big franchise is going to be $100," right? And they keep floating this, and I feel like that's kind of not working, but I'm not sure.
Mm.
Our game will probably not be 80 or $100. I'll tell you that. But like that's three meals at Five Guys at the same time, and
Yeah, I know what you mean.
so and like you could, if you really like a game, you could play it for a really long time. And so I don't know how to weigh these things, but I think because a game doesn't have a physical reality to it, it's just like something you see on a screen. It just makes you not want to pay that as much for it, I think.
Well, even if I go
Um,
out to a restaurant, it's $100 just for me and my wife. We're
yeah,
not having a lot either. Like we're not
yeah.
doing anything crazy,
No,
you know.
and that's what I mean though, is like that's kind of happened sometime over the past, let's say since COVID, maybe,
Yeah,
whatever
I'd
economic
say,
regime
yeah.
after that. So do we come out of that in a year? Does it feel better, or does it continue to feel hard for a little while? I mean, eventually economic cycles play their course and we end up in new places. I do think so in terms of internal to the game industry. I will say the hard years were 2023 and 2024 and maybe the beginning of this year. So, in the news, there were all sorts of developers going out of business, all sorts of developers having huge layoffs and all that. And I think there's a lot less of that now, uh, which means it's kind of, I mean, you still see some, but it's kind of played its
Picking back
course.
up. Yep.
And then we'll see, right? We'll see what happens next. I would like good times for everybody. If everybody feels wealthy and they spend a little bit of it on my game, that's great for me. It helps me keep doing what I'm doing. But I don't know. But these are the kind of questions we just have to grapple with.
Mm.
So
Do you see GTA 6 helping the industry with
I mean,
casuals, bringing casuals in?
obviously, anytime there's a super, super big game, it just helps maintain that gaming is a thing that a lot of people are doing, right? To what extent does it reach a new audience? I'm not sure because there's been a bunch of GTA games already. And so maybe you found that audience. At the same time, it's been so long since GTA 5 that like some people were not really old enough to play video games when GTA 5 came out. And
Yeah.
now they are, right? And so maybe that's some new audience. I don't know. I'm not the right person to ask about that. I think because it's not my
Yeah.
world. Like that, the big mega game that literally everybody in the world knows about is not what I do. So,
I know, I know.
yeah,
Thank you for your time, man. I
sure.
really appreciate it. Everyone go out and wish list. Anything else you want to plug?
We have other ways for you to find out about the game. So, there's a Twitter, uh, handle that you could follow. I forget. I should have looked up what it's called.
I'll leave
But
it in
look
the
up Order of
description.
the
I'll leave it in
Sinking
the
Star.
description.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on Twitter. There's also like a Discord channel where you can go and members of the team hang out there sometimes and can answer questions or talk about the game and stuff like that. And then as we roll into next year, I'm sure we'll have more announcements
Beautiful.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Promise me you'll come back on once the game's kind of out and we can maybe
Sure.
discuss it. Yeah.
Yeah. There will be, I mean, um, anytime a game's not quite done, we want to hold some stuff back for future announcements and all that. So, as complicated as the game seems, let's say, there's
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff we haven't even, neither in the trailer
Will you
nor
release
right now
that?
am I
Are you going
publicly
to release
speaking
that
it.
before it's out, or are you going to let people discover it?
I think there's some major things that we need to let players discover. I did that in The
Yeah.
Witness, and it was very successful, I think. But there's definitely more that we could say as
Yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
so we'll see how that works out.
Beautiful. Thank you, man, for your
Yeah.
time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good talking.